Okay. So let's have a recap of what we discussed yesterday. Would like to start off. What did we do and what did we discuss?
We calculated all the, I don't know, EMV, EO, PL, EVPL,
Yeah, that's
DOL,
for decision making, right?
Axiom
Yes.
decision making. Yeah.
Okay. So different criterias, different expectation. So how do you solve for it? What else after that? What did we discuss? What was the activity we did last night?
Like the seat work we did.
Yes.
We did the like filling in the data, like the blanks, the data wrangling.
If there's missing information, what do we do, right? So
Yeah,
you
and then we
have,
analyzed it from
yeah.
there.
And always remember that it's not like actually an exact science, so you have to be aware of the limitation. So you use the easiest method that's at your disposal, and you go from there. And always remember, every time you do something, a decision, there's always a pros and cons to the things that we do. So whether you're making decision, try to analyze data, and so forth. So today we'll discuss uh, another aspect of descriptive analysis is focusing on how to actually visualize data, right? Have you guys watched the link video that I've provided discussing the topic itself? So what does the term suggest when you hear the term data visualization? What's the emphasis here? And how do we utilize this in data analysis?
Well, it'd be like turning the data into like graphs and charts that you can see like without having to go too in depth, just like a kind of like an overview, like a summarization of the
So
data.
again, it's just descriptive analysis, but why is this so important? And if you notice, in a lot of companies, they're looking for individuals who has expertise, knowledge in visualizing data. What's the importance, or why is it necessary?
Well, it makes it easier to kind of understand for like people who aren't accountants. Like it makes it easier to present. It highlights like any big like it makes it like any big discrepancies in the data. Like if there's like a big like you can see it right away with like the bar chart, for example. Like
Yes,
just it highlights any of the like it's good for highlighting what you're trying to present.
exactly. So obviously, we're using one of our main senses when we're trying to make sense of the data that you're presented with. And the first thing that we often use is our vision, right? Our eyesight. So presenting it effectively is as important. Obviously, understanding the data yourself first is important, but being able to communicate it without even uttering a single word is a very powerful. And how you do it, obviously there is a right way of doing it, and not just willy-nilly just presenting any charts or graphs here. And as I mentioned earlier, what are the different visualization techniques that you are familiar with? There are only a few when you're talking about data visualization, right? So what are the main methods or techniques that you've learned in your statistics class? Anyone? And guys, come on, let's turn on the camera so we can have a better discussion here. And take note, analysis is very critical, and analyzing your behavior, your performance on a daily basis. So don't think for a moment that I'm taking it for granted, right? If grades are important to you, this is part of your grades. I mentioned, right, class participation, even though it's only a small percentage in your overall uh, grade. So at the end of the day, when you're trying to consider whether to give you an A or an A plus, it might matter at the end of the day, right? Something to consider, right? Again, going back. So in terms of the techniques in data visualization, what are your main choices, so to speak? I think Ryan already mentioned earlier. So any guesses,
Like-
guys?
Graphs or like something like that, like any way to present the data
Graphs?
that's easy. Yeah.
Okay. Is it only graphs or what else? What type of graphs are we talking about? So we want to be more specific here. So obviously
Could
you're
be-
already familiar with it, but you have to spell it out so that you always know what to use for the right type of situation, right? So what type of graphs like what Joel just mentioned?
Like you could have pie charts, you could have bar graphs, scatter
Okay.
plots, like
So pie charts, that's good.
histograms, I think is another one.
Histograms and bar graphs. That's it. There's only a few that you can use. And if you watch my video, there's one of those types of visualization techniques that you should avoid using. Can anyone guess what am I talking about?
Don't do the pie charts.
Exactly, Kyle. Why do you say that?
It can get confusing.
Confusing in what? Can you please elaborate? Because I have nothing against pie chart. It's a dead giveaway right off the bat if I see people using pie charts. I know they're a newbie. Even, professors, doctors at that, who love using pie charts, I know right off the bat they're newbies if they are using pie charts. Now, Kyle, can you elaborate further to the class? What do you mean by if pie charts could be problematic in terms of communicating or presenting your data visually?
Well, I know if you're doing like that 3D style, you like pick up more or more so you pick up you basically you're not looking at it right. You see more than what there actually is. And then 2D, it's kind of the same thing. You're struggling to actually see what's being presented more so.
Exactly. And obviously, as the name suggests of a pie chart, the more categories you're trying to compare, right? It's easy enough if it's gender, right? If it's male or female. It's very simple. But let's say in your college, right? How many courses is Medicine Hat offering? It's a multitude, right? Imagine you have to slice that many courses. It gets confusing quickly, and not just only that. When you cut a slice, whether in the graphs or in real life, right? When you're ordering a pizza, when you try to cut the slice, can you actually cut the slice equally to make it fair for everyone? Or does someone tends to get the larger slice of the pizza versus the other and so forth, right? And you try to compare it visually just to look at it. Is it easy to compare the different sizes visually? So you always have to remember what our capabilities is as a human being. So visually, we have limitation, right? So not that we have to wear glasses, right? So that's that's a problem. Stephanie, yeah, I've already let everyone in. So, do you believe that our vision has limitation, and what type of limitation could it be? Think about it. Compared to other animals, so to speak, do you think we have the best vision? No. Compared to whom or to what animal?
Like any bird of prey or even
That-
like cats.
That's right. Why do you say cats have better vision than us?
I think they see better in the dark than we do.
So technically, they have
Better
night vision goggles, so to speak, right? Okay. How about birds like owls, right? Owls can see practically almost 360 degrees, right? They can turn their head almost a full turn. So it gives you a wide view when you're looking in your surroundings trying to catch prey, right? Can you say the same for humans? We might have a stiff neck just trying to turning your neck here, or suddenly, right? So again, wait here I'm trying to let me show you an exercise here just to prove whether whether our limited vision is actually present or not. here. Okay, I want you to I want to share a video with you guys and try to tell me and try to follow the instructions mentioned in the video, and we'll go from there. Trying to test your vision here, so to speak. Okay. Share screen. Okay, can't use that one. I need to use the other. Okay. Share screen. Okay. Can you guys see the screen? Okay. So read the instructions and try to follow the instructions as mentioned as best as you can. Okay, so I'll play the video. Count how many times the player is wearing. Okay. It's passing the ball. Don't forget to count how many times. Concentrate on the task at hand. So use your eyes to guide you. It's almost over. Okay. Oh, how many passes did you see? Shintaro, you said 14. How about the rest? Were you able to get the right answer? Okay. Oh, yeah. Ryan says 14, Steph says 15. Tara was able to get 16. Did you also notice anything peculiar in the video? Let's see who noticed it. Anyone? Go ahead, Shintaro.
I think most of us saw the gorilla.
So who didn't notice the gorilla? Did everyone notice the gorilla? Who didn't? Tara didn't notice it, right? Why was that? It was right in front of us, right? It's staring you while you were focusing on the task at hand, right? What do you think is the problem there, Tara? Was it something wrong with your vision? Why you couldn't see the monkey there?
Well, I was focusing on the ball. I wasn't looking at whatever else was in the screen.
Exactly. And that's what our limitation. Even though it's straight right in front of us, we can only do so much, or we have our limitation. We can only do one thing at a time. That's why when people say don't drink and drive, we can drink and drive. We cannot multitask when we're driving. The fact that driving in itself is a very difficult maneuvering already. Trying to text, trying to talk to someone, doing lots of things while driving is a recipe of a disaster waiting to happen. It's always discouraged. It's illegal, so to speak, right? So if it's in front of us, what more in our peripheral, right? Our peripheral is very limited, right? 180 degrees we cannot see already, let alone in front of us. So in essence, what's trying to tell us, we want to simplify what we're trying to communicate visually. That's why in marketing, if you notice, you see effective marketing campaigns if they can convey the message subliminally. In our case, we're not trying to be subliminal. We're trying to be straightforward. So keeping your presentation simple, using appropriate charts, histograms, bar graphs, that's it. None of the pie chart. And going back as discussed earlier, avoid using pie charts because the trying to compare the different slices is difficult in itself. Right? If you're going to use a pie chart, why not just use a bar graph or a histogram? So if you're trying to compare numerical values, let's say your grades from one class to the other, use a histogram. If you're comparing categorical data, whether it's gender, profession, location, whatever the case, use a bar graph. Simple as that. Now, obviously, it can get complicated quickly as we move forward when we're trying to create a dashboard here, which we'll discuss next meeting as well. So when you're creating a chart, obviously, it can get complicated if you have a lot of variables trying to make sense of the data set. Again, as I keep on reiterating, the key here is you're trying to tell a story. So the story that matters, that makes sense to you. And whatever you're trying to communicate, it's important for it to come across clearly. Don't just spit out, words, just like when you're, writing for your English class. If the teacher asks you to narrate a story, it has to be a clear statement, right? There's a beginning, middle part, and the end. It cannot be just discuss anything out of the blue that you can come up with. So how you communicate visually, well, you have to organize it first and foremost, right? So you have to know what you're talking about and be able to present it effectively. So we'll discuss the case that we have here. So it's about the movie industry, right? If I get it right. Yeah, it's the box office data set, right? Who'd like to discuss the overview? What's the premise here? So it talks about the movies. So what's the objective here based on the case provided here? I'd like to start off. Anyone?
Probably revenues, maximizing revenues.
Maximizing
It talks
revenue.
about, yeah, sales and stuff.
So how do you determine if the movie is doing well? Is there a benchmark that one can determine easily if a film is doing well or not based on the data set provided?
If it makes more than it's spent, so if it made more than its budget.
Exactly. But how much more? And always remember, actually, if you did a little bit research, just because it says the production budget is, let's say, $10 million, and if you earn $20 million, you already made money out of it, right? But that's not always the case. What has to go in hand when you're making a film? Is it just the cost of making the film? Paying your employees, the actors, the directors, and so forth. Is that the only thing that goes into making a film?
No, there's also like promotion, like all the CGI, like all the different things like that.
So if it's a sci-fi film, right? If they're using very technical to improve the presentation visually, right? So the marketing is an important aspect which is not always mentioned. That's why, again, always be aware or be wary that sometimes data presented to you can be deceiving. So it's incumbent for you as individuals to go check if the data that is presented is actually real or not. As the example I mentioned regarding the movies, some say that typically when a movie is being made, the budget that they spend not only from the production side, but also in the marketing is also is twice the amount that they spend for the production itself. So let's say it's $10 million, right? For making the whole film. So you have to add double that amount, factoring the marketing, especially if it's not just a national distribution, if it's a worldwide distribution. So you can just imagine the promotion that you see the billboards, right? The advertisements in local television, whether it's online, social media, whatever the case, right? So they have to spend a lot of money. And even that, sometimes they don't even make their money back. That's why you notice lately, especially the big sci-fi films, especially the superhero genre, is not doing so well. Even though they're earning millions compared hundreds of millions compared to decades past. I think when I was younger, a film is considered a blockbuster if it earns more than 50 million, 100 million. Now it's chump change, right? If you look back at it. So how do you define success? Well, obviously there's inflation, so obviously the numbers will always be inflated. It will always go higher. Okay, so let's take a closer look in terms of how did you analyze the data here? So let's start with group 1 here. By the way, we have a new student here today. Is that yeah? How do you pronounce your first name? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So group 1, you have a new member. It's Yaya Bonaya. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. So you have a new member. So Tara, Ryan, Shintaro, and Yaya will be group 1. And then group 2 is still the same. So now for each group, there will be consisting of 4 members already. Okay. Anyway, going back to group 1. So what was your insights or takeaway in terms of your analysis? What did you find out when you were analyzing the data set?
So we did a bunch of charts and bar graphs and whatnot to
Mhm.
visualize some of the data, but do you want like a recommendation or just like an alternative?
Let's start first with your analysis. So when you started analyzing the data set, what did you see that piqued your attention, that got your attention, so to speak?
Just like, well, I don't know. We did graphs on like each like kind of factor, like on like which genres made the most and like which decades, like just kind of to show like the change in interest over time, like in which was the most popular. So like
Okay.
we did like a graph showing uh the different decades and the genres within that decade. So we saw like, for example, like I guess one thing we talked about was like sci-fi and fantasy was like nowhere to be found until the 80s, and then well, I guess there's some in the 70s too, but it just like blew up out of nowhere, and then
All of a
it's been
sudden,
like the
right?
most, yeah, and that's been the most popular so far.
Okay, that's very interesting.
Um,
So you noticed that. Now, if you were to guess, what led to that sudden explosion, the rise of popular? Now, obviously, there's been sci-fi for so long. Even
I'd
at
say
this
like
time.
technology and like budgets, maybe like well, I guess more technology, like being able to do more special effects and like do more out there kind of stuff, like show more.
Exactly. So technology was the key. But before the explosion of sci-fi as a popular genre, what was the preferred genre at that time?
Drama,
Drama.
and it's drama and animated. We found were some of the animated
Popular.
surprised me because
Okay.
like even going back to like the 1930s and 40s, like the only ones in the 40s were animated. I think it might have just been one movie, but one or two movies, but
Okay. But that's interesting. So that's why if you see anything interesting, you want to take note of it, right?
yeah.
That's something you might come back and use that information when you're making a decision or recommendation later on, right? That's why when you're looking on the full spectrum, especially in years past or decades or even centuries at that, the more data points that you can collect, it will gives you better perspective, right? It's not just a 1 year thing. Like for example, if you were to look at 2020, which was the pandemic year, everything is skewed downwards. Performance were down, sales were down, everything was down. And if you were to base your decision based on that data point alone, could be misleading, right? But if you were to look prior 2020, that's a different picture, right? Now, if your performance were down during that year, how quickly you recover is another discussion point here, right? So always context is everything. Okay. Thank you, Ryan, regarding that. How about group 2? What insights were you also able to see apart from what group 1 mentioned already?
I mean, something that we definitely saw was, I guess, how much like inflation really affected things, and how in the data set we felt like there is some data missing, that it compared um, it had the adjusted for inflation like revenue, but it didn't have adjusted for inflation for the budget, so it wasn't as comparable for the data.
Okay, so just to go over, when you said what does it really mean? I'm sure you're all familiar with the term inflation, especially with the current economic situation. What does inflation actually mean? If you remember in your economics 101.
I mean, very basic is that, a dollar today doesn't equal a dollar tomorrow, like that the value of the dollar decreases or increases, but generally decreases over the years.
Okay, so meaning you have to spend more just to get that same dollar back sometime in the future. That's why holding on to your money is a bad, bad decision to begin with. Anyway, so which movies tends to were you able to find out tends to have the highest or better performing in terms of revenue or sales that you found out in the data?
Well, I mean, some of especially the older movies with the like, whether it be, what was it, Gone with the Wind, or some of these other ones that were like or Ben-Hur, like that had like relatively lower budgets but made insane amounts of money, considering the time period that they were like released in, especially Gone with the Wind.
Yeah, have you seen that film?
It has been a very long time, but I have, yes.
But you have seen. Okay. Oh, good for you. Actually, I've seen it only a couple of times because it's a very long film. So if you're not into drama, there has to be an interlude in the actual film that they presented. Yeah, it's not my cup of tea, but it's important to see what films were made before our time, right? So it gives you an idea. Actually, many of the films currently that are being produced is only a remake of past yester films, which is kind of interesting. So they haven't been making original contents already, which is kind of sad. Meaning some of the films that was made in the past are timeless. And they've been trying to replicate that success to varying degrees, so to speak. Okay, Prince mentioned the comparison between genre, ratings, there's data integrity. Yeah, there's a lot of limitations. So there are missing information, how you reconcile that, which is the part of the struggle here. So let's assume you're able to rectify that. Once you whether you include it or you exclude it, depending on the case, then you have to make do with what the data is. Again, at the end of the day, when you're analyzing data, it's only your best guess, right? How confident are you in your analysis? Is it 90%, 95%, or 99%? There's no certainty, right? The only certainty in life are what? If you were to answer that question. Oh, there
Death
should
and
be,
I think
taxes.
therefore I am.
yeah, debt and taxes. That's only the certainty in life. And change, right? It's inevitable, whether we accept it or not. So if you know that's certain, then might as well do something about it that would benefit you as an individual, right? So you always take advantage. It shouldn't be construed as a negative, but it should be used as an opportunity. That's why in marketing, you hear the term the SWOT analysis, right? What are your strengths and weaknesses? And how do you change those weaknesses into opportunities, right? Never use it as a negative to get you down, but to help you be more successful, as mentioned. Anyway, so in the movie industry, what aspects were you able to find out if you were comparing different variables here? So when you analyze each and every one, when you're talking of genre, the ratings, What else was given there? The year it was released, the inflation, box office receipt, and so forth, right? So on its own, you can analyze it. That's basic 101 in descriptive analysis. But it's the relationship, it's what you want to look at, comparing them side by side, right? So this is where correlation comes in, scatter plots comes in, just to see if there's anything that sticks out. Were you guys able to find anything that stood out that could be helpful in terms of better understanding, like what Shintaro mentioned earlier, that in terms of making films, the goal here is to maximize profit or revenue, right? So which perspective are we looking at here? Whose perspective are we basing this decision or analysis from?
The studios that are creating the movies.
Exactly, right? And what have you found out in terms of the studios making films? Is it a lucrative industry, or is it a very difficult industry to break in? What do you think? Based on the numbers that you've been seeing so far. Because they're throwing a lot of numbers there, right?
I mean, I would say it's lucrative, but it can be very volatile depending on
Exactly. So if you go in knowing that it's very lucrative and not knowing that it's volatile, you'll be in for a rude awakening, right? So spending, creating a film that's millions of dollars. Do you guys have millions of dollars lying around to spend to make a film? Let's go out and make a film, right? It's not as easy, right? Even for big studios, as big as, let's say, Disney, Warner Brothers, Sony, the big studios, right? You'll see right off the bat, when they make films, they expect a big return. Is it always been a home run recently for the big blockbuster films? Any big blockbuster that you've enjoyed watching recently?
I really enjoyed the Oppenheimer film last year.
Oh, so it's not even a superhero film at that. So it's a totally different genre. So it's somewhat of a biopic of Oppenheimer's story. So it's totally different, right? Okay. But is it something that you'd rewatch it again, Joel?
I would say it's not something I would want to watch every year or something like that. I would definitely watch it again in a couple of years or something. I found it to be quite compelling, but
Okay.
it's not something I would put on every year.
Yeah, okay. How about the film that you would rewatch frequently?
Well, it's like the one that came out this year was Dune 2. I watched that twice in theaters before it
Wow.
within the month.
Oh, sad to say I haven't watched
really-
Dune 2
Oh, it was really good. You should.
because I
very
wanted
good.
to wait for the whole series to conclude before I start watching the whole series.
Yeah, I
don't-
think they're looking at making a third one. So yeah.
Yeah, I know. That's why I hold on waiting for the whole series to come out, because it's like, watching a Netflix series. You want the whole lot completed already, and then you can binge watch it. Hopefully in the cinema, if they can do it again in succession, or watching at your own home. But if you were to look for any films that you can rewatch it, just comfort movie, so to speak, that you can rewatch anytime, you can put it on and not worry about it. Any recent film that stick out? And for my taste, right? Joel and Ryan just mentioned those films are very long, 2 hours at that. I mean, I miss those days that you could watch a simple film, an hour and a half, and you get enjoyment out of it. I miss those days. Don't you? Right? I mean, to the point that that you've been watching a very long film, your butt is starting to hurt, and you're uncomfortable. You have to keep on moving around. It's very. You have to go to the bathroom, take a break, and so forth. That's when it's a very long film. How did I know? When I watched the Justice League film, what was it? The last one, what was it? The one with Zack Snyder's. Is it Zack Snyder's?
Yeah, Zack Snyder's. He did like his own version of it. and
Yeah.
I think it was longer, like a
Yeah.
director's cut.
And I
But
just
yeah,
wanted to
but
compare, right?
That's like the way I look at it is like some movies are okay if they're longer. Like Dune 2 was great. Like that was a long movie, but like Zack Snyder's like Justice League, that's like a boring, in my mind, that's like a not so good long movie. That's a movie I would struggle to sit through. in
Actually,
one
they
sitting.
didn't build up the story, the characters effectively, more so than the Marvel, the Avengers Endgame, right? They build up the characters in different previous films so that when they came together in the Avengers film or the Endgame, it made sense, right? Even though it was
Mhm.
a very long film. But for this one, it's just a mishmash. And how terrible of a film should it be that they had to create two separate versions of the same film, right? The one that Josh Whedon created, and then the other one that originally was Zack Snyder's version, right? If you're the studio head there, you know, you must be kicking yourself, right? Why do you have to repeat creating the films twice just to get the same result? To varying degrees, right? And you know, it ended their saga of creating the superhero. Now they're trying to reboot it again, right? With I forgot who was it, the one who made the Guardians of the
James
Galaxy.
Gunn.
Yeah, James Gunn is helming it,
Yeah.
which is I'm very skeptical about it.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't think it's gonna succeed.
And
But that's just
they
me.
didn't even want to reuse or cast again the Superman character of Henry Cavill, right? He was the ideal Superman character for current times, right? I mean, my favorite is still the original one, Christopher Reeve. He's the epitome of what a Superman character should look like. Not too buff, but the ideals, the best ideals of mankind, so to speak, right? And you know, Cavill somewhat projects that as well. And they didn't even want his services. Okay, can they come up with a better character? Is what I'm saying, right? It's always can they come up with a better product? If it's inferior, then I'm not gonna waste my time. Why would I pay good money to watch a terrible film to begin with? Right? It's all about credibility. Anyway, so looking at the films, you know, it varies in terms of success, and you know, there's a lot of wokeness that's being incorporated in the films, and instead of being entertained, which is the primary focus of any film, right? Whether it's a movie, TV show, comedy, and or whatnot, right? You're supposed to be entertained. It's supposed to uplift you from whatever you're encountering. The suspension of belief, so to speak, right? It's not you're trying to relate to current times. If that were the case, then you know our current life as it is already complicated, problematic in itself, right? So why would I pay good money for that, right? Anyway, so going back here, so if you're a movie studio, what type of film should you be making that guarantees success, if it's possible? So I think Ryan already mentioned that pre uh uh pre the popularity of sci-fi, it used to be drama, and then eventually sci-fi succeeded. But that's already faltering nowadays, right? So what do we do now? Do we still pursue? Should Marvel continue churning out sci-fi films time and time again? Or has it reached its peak, so to speak? I think this is just my opinion, that the peak for sci-fi films is, you know, when Avengers Endgame ended. After that, it went downhill. Now there was a blip when they released Spider-Man No Way Home, which did really well. But after that, I don't know. I could be wrong, right? But so how do you guarantee success is the question here, right? If you're a studio, you want to keep on, you know, taking advantage. You know, it should supposed to be a cash cow, right? Sci-fi films is supposed to be a home run for many studios. How come it's not doing so well nowadays? So is there a way to guarantee success? Is what I'm asking here. Okay, so let's ask
So,
group. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say. So we found like, so obviously this is like, this isn't like this is pretty obvious, but the higher the budget, like usually like there's a high correlation between budget and the success.
Okay.
Usually the higher the budget, the more successful the movie is, and that was kind of true for a long time until I'd say now recently. I think it's changing because like you look at all these new movies that are coming out with like all these Marvel movies that they're pumping millions and like hundreds of millions,
Hundreds of
maybe even
millions. Yeah,
like
that's right.
yeah, of dollars into them, and like and they're flopping because like the interest is gone, right? People have lost interest, and so like that's one thing that I said was changing, is that budget doesn't necessarily mean success anymore, like
Okay.
because it's risky now, right?
Yeah, actually,
what
it's
it is.
it's risky to begin with.
Yeah, it's always been
It's been
risky, but like
risky.
it's been failing now. Like it's not. There's lots of budgets that aren't
Yeah.
succeeding.
And I always use this example, even before the end of Endgame. If you were to look at a film, if you're familiar with the actor Ryan Reynolds, he's playing Deadpool nowadays, right? Before that, he used to play a different character, another superhero, if you can recall. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I mean, he also played old Deadpool in one of the X-Men movies, but also Green Lantern.
Green Lantern. Oh, so it's not a guarantee, but same actor, two different superhero, varying success, right? Green Lantern flop. Deadpool, which is R rated, has a limited audience, did even much better. So what's the problem there? Is it the actor's fault? Or is it the character's fault that he chose? Or is there something else? Right? So if you were just to look at, based on that example, or actually another sci-fi film, which I was hoping that they would make a trilogy out of it, was John Carter, if you're familiar with that book. The Man from Mars. So well, it was interesting, the premise, but how they executed, they didn't appeal to the mass audience, right? And I think Disney, at the time before Disney were able to acquire Marvel, they were lucky when Robert Downey Jr. played the titular character of Iron Man, right, which kickstarted the whole Marvel genre or the MCU. But nothing lasts forever, so to speak. Okay, so going back, so not necessarily higher budget is a guaranteed success, so to speak. So what else were you able to see there? So aside from higher budget, just because you see a higher correlation doesn't mean it's a certainty. That's why the correlation, unless the correlation is 1.0, meaning for every increase of higher budget is a guaranteed success, you want to be careful with that. Budget is a factor, obviously, but it's not the only factor you have to consider. But that's a good starting point. Okay. Actually, on the flip side, right? Are you familiar with the film The Hangover?
Yeah, who isn't? Come on.
Okay, I'm just
Like, we've all seen that. We have to have.
But when it came out, the first time it came out, it's not that popular. It wasn't a big budget blockbuster film. And when I saw the trailer, I liked the premise. See, I always look at the trailer. It gives you an insight as to what the film typically is and if it's interesting or not, if it gets your attention, right? That's why I enjoy going to the movie theaters and watching the trailers to see what are the upcoming films. And when I saw this, I'm not familiar with the characters. And at the time, what was his name? The good-looking guy who played Limitless as well. Crap.
Oh, Bradley
Bradley
Cooper.
Cooper. Yeah. Right. He wasn't that popular at the time, right? He was an up and comer, and Zach Galifianakis was an up and comer as well. And I just found the premise interesting. And when I watched the film first time, it was really entertaining, right? And they tried to milk the succeeding sequels, right? The second was trying to stretch a bit. They went to a different location, and the third one, and so forth. But it worked. People enjoyed it, right? So does it matter if you have a big budget that will guarantee success, or even a small budgeted film will guarantee success? So it varies, right? So it's not the be all and all. Obviously, more resources is always important. But have you noticed, whether it's in the film or in our personal situation, if you have a limited budget, you have to make do with what you have, is what it's trying to tell you. If you get extra, then that's a bonus. But it doesn't always guarantee success, because some people tend to procrastinate, lose that edge if they have so much resources. Similar to what's happening now with the Marvel films, right? They're trying to churn out film after film. Did people even ask for those films, right? You may not agree with me. Like when the film after the Avengers Endgame, right? Did anyone ask for Shang-Chi? Do any of you were comic lover know the character Shang-Chi when they introduced the character at the time? I didn't, right? And then they had the Eternals, right? They had 10 main characters. How the heck are you supposed to follow all those 10 characters in the film? Right? So it was a disaster waiting to happen, right? It's a strategy. Just because they had popular actors and actresses playing certain characters, they thought it was going to carry them along. Sometimes it does, but more often than not, it does not, right? So high budget is not a guaranteed success. So what else were you able to see there? Oh, let's ask group 2 again. So budget is very key there, right? But that's debatable. So that's a hogwash already. So always keep that. That's why you want to discuss it and debate if it merits, if indeed budget is the key part to success, they want to just throw in more money. That's not always the case, right? So what else were you able to see here? So apart from budget, what else can we use that will help studios churn out successful films or big budgeted film? Just like what Joel mentioned, right? Oppenheimer was a big success. Barbie was a big success. I haven't watched Barbie. I haven't watched Oppenheimer. I'm not the key demographic. Okay. So what made them successful compared to the other films, right? One would like to understand so that you can recreate it. That's why, this is just my opinion again, that, creating sequels, it gets tiring after a while, right? I'll give you a good example. Have you guys watched the first Jurassic Park film? The one that Steven Spielberg's made? The best, right? Now, they tried to make the sequel, right? Jurassic Park 2, Jurassic Park 3. For me, I couldn't understand the logic here. They didn't learn their lesson the first movie was out, that creating the dinosaurs is a disaster waiting to happen for the human race, right? And they didn't learn, so they had to make the second film and the third film. And then what did they do after the 3 films? They rebooted the whole film, right? With Chris Pratt helming the new film, right? What's it called? Jurassic World, right? And it's the same premise again. That's why I keep on going back to the original films. For me anyway, the original concept is so fresh, refreshing at the time. And trying to recreate it, it's difficult, right? That's why I don't know. For me, if they try to reboot certain series or films, it's hard to recapture that magic, so to speak. You have to create new content, so to speak, right? Like when you talk of TV series, like I don't know if you've watched this TV series which was very popular during the pandemic, at the height of the pandemic, the Squid Game. Are you familiar with that? Even my kids like the red light, green light, playing on Roblox, not the actual TV series, but even the kids know the concept of red light, green light, right? Because it's an original concept. That's why it captured the audience attention. So what else is a key factor that will hopefully guarantee success, if possible, to making films? So what else can we consider here? So obviously the data set that you provided is a starting point. That's why when you're making decisions, not just in our case, but for future cases and other data sets you're going to be dealing with, you have to go beyond the data set. That's why doing some additional research is always pertinent, relevant to what you're doing, because you will not be given the whole information as necessary. Okay, so what else? So what else were you able to identify? Group 2? Come on, I want some insights. Guys, the exercise that we're doing here is the starting point. So when you're doing your visualization, you're going to create your own data dashboard in the succeeding case, the exercises, all the way leading up to your final paper. Story, people like and dislike. Yeah, what type of genre or ratings? Ratings alone, which is more lucrative? Obviously, there are different ratings, right? from general audience, PG, R-rated, R18, and so forth. Shintaro says it's G. Why do you think G is the most lucrative rating for amassing, maximum revenue?
Has the widest audience available for it.
So, what G movie have you watched recently, Joel? Anyone?
I mean,
I'd be
I haven't
really
watched too
concerned
many
if any of
movies
you.
in-
That's my point. Oh, see, no, but I like the idea, right? G is supposed to cater to everyone, but is it really for everyone?
well, I mean, maybe not in the sense of like the movies catered towards them, but it's, I guess, available.
Available.
Right.
That's right. But to whom is it really geared towards? To, if you think about it,
Generally kids.
kids. Oh, so are we still kids? Well, we can feel like kids, right? I have an excuse. I have kids. I have twin boys, so I can always make an excuse if I watch a kids film, right? So the term general is not necessarily general for everyone. So it's limited. So that's why I asked right away. When was the last time you watched a general film, general audience film? I won't say recently, right? Why is that? It's either good or bad, but why is that so? Because it's geared towards kids, right? And what do kids like?
Simple flashing lights, like funny characters. I don't know.
Oh, okay. That's right. Simple enough, right? And that's too simple for us, right? So as you become a teenager, an adult, you have different tastes. So it evolves. So you want something more interesting, more evolved, so to speak. So G may be ideal, but it's not the right the right rating. So which is the next best thing if it's not general audience? On the flip
Well,
side,
maybe
right?
like
Sorry.
so one thing I thought about, I don't know if this is like correct, but like so the thing with so R-rated movies, so because they're kind of there's not like a lot of them, they're kind of like something that people want, and there's only a limited amount because like studios aren't like a lot of studios don't want to take the risk of making an R-rated movie or stuff like that, right? So like we figured we found averages and stuff, and we found that the average box office for R-rated movies are very close to like PG. Like it's only a little bit
Mm,
less, and
okay.
there's only 4 R-rated movies on that data set.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
whereas like nowadays, since the data, because the data is like 10 years old now, I think
Yeah.
the most recent was like 2012, but since then there's been a lot of R-rated movies that have been like extremely successful, like
Popular.
Logan
Yeah. That's right.
and stuff like that, like even in the genres that people like
Yeah.
so I think that R-rated is kind of on the rise, I
On the
guess. Like
rise.
it's a growing
But is it
trend.
a
Like
preferred genre if you were to
I mean, for some
make a
people, yeah, like I think it's got its own niche. Like I think
market?
it's got a market that's been kind of left
Yeah.
neglected, like
Yeah.
until now. So I think there's a lot of people that just hearing, oh, it's an R-rated superhero movie, I'm gonna go see
Yeah.
it. Like Logan, for example, like
Yeah.
that one was huge.
Yeah. Actually.
Deadpool.
So actually the R18 rating is the complete opposite of the general audience, if you notice. They're both opposite of the spectrum, right? One focuses on the kids, the other one focuses on the adults. So what's the best compromise in between? So you're correct in saying the PG. Now, is there a difference between PG and PG-13 in those ratings? So my kids keep on asking me that question all the time. Are we allowed to watch this and so forth? Is there a difference? And what does it really mean when you say PG or PG-13?
Parental guidance, I'm pretty sure is what the PG stands for.
Yes, and it
And then
implies
like
what?
so I think PG-13 is just like um I don't know. I don't actually know what the difference is. I'm assuming PG is for younger like children and the PG-13 is maybe for like younger teenagers. Like it's kind of a different age, like it's a little bit more. I think it means parental guidance like up to 13 maybe, like up to the age of 13, and then I think that's what that would mean, but
It's similar to R18. Like R18 is you have to be at least 18 and above. to be able to watch the film, right? So PG-13 is the same logic.
Okay.
So you have to be at least 13 with parental guidance. You have to be with your parents, right? And PG is just you have to with parents. So it doesn't matter what age is the
Okay.
kid, but you have to have parents with you, or either of the parents, right? So is it more suitable? Well, it's hard to judge whether if there's a big difference between PG versus PG-13. Maybe it's the theme of the film, the context of the film, the dialogue, or the genre that the film will be focusing on. So there's a slight difference here, but more so it's just there has to be parental supervision, so to speak, is the key, right? So it's pretty surprising when you look at it that, like what Shintaro just mentioned earlier, that the most a wider audience should be the target of every studio, right? General audience. But that's not the case because it's catering to a limited audience already, kids. Sure, the kids has to bring along their parents, right? But it's not necessarily the parents' preference to watch those films. So a more mature content like PG and above is more palatable. Kids, adults, grandparents can watch the film. Okay. But if you notice, it varies still, right? In terms of the rating. How about in terms of genre? So is it always tied up to one particular genre if you're looking when you looked at the data? So I think drama was mentioned, sci-fi is mentioned, but it's failing now, right? So is there an exact formula? If you were to make a film today, what type of film should you make? If there's no story that you have come up with, but if you're looking for the genre, the rating, the budget, what would be ideal that would guarantee success? Right? What do you mean ChatGPT? ChatGPT can only answer at a certain point. So be careful with utilizing AI, right? So sad to say, it hasn't reached to that point. So the tool is only as good as the person using it, right? Like in the case of ChatGPT, right? If you don't ask the right question, it will spit out nonsense, right? So if you're looking for a specific answer, you have to ask specific questions, relevant questions, okay? But anyway, going back, so what do you think? What would be the recipe for making a successful film? A guaranteed hit, so to speak. Is there a way? Given the information that we've been discussing so far. Okay, let's go around. Oh, Tara, let's start with you. What do you think? Based on the group's analysis, or your opinion as well.
I mean, I don't think you can guarantee that no matter what genre you pick, it won't succeed if it's not like a good like storyline. So like you could pick drama because it's still like one of the most popular ones, but if your like storyline of the movie's not good, it's still not going to do good.
Okay, so storyline is important, right? So how do you ensure that the storyline is great? It's good.
So for me, it's like when I look at, like, for example, like Oppenheimer, the reason that movie interests me so much is because we know the director, like Christopher Nolan, like he makes a lot of good movies. And so like there's kind of that, like, I don't know if I'd say trust, but like reputation of like, we like going in, this is a director you like, he's made a lot of like, so like the same thing would be for writers, right? Like having a good writer ensures a good
That
story.
has already
like,
previous credits, right?
yeah. So you're not wasting your budget on some person who's never written a movie before, which is something they
Yes.
do now. It's a big problem. Like in Marvel, for example, a lot of the writers for these Marvel movies, like the reason they're failing is because they're giving these budgets to people who've never made movies before, and it
And
shows.
who
Like,
doesn't even like comics to begin with.
yeah,
Which is kind of
that's
funny.
another can of worms. But yeah,
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
so
So choosing the right storyline is important. So choosing the right director is important. So choosing the right person to do the job is important. I think that's a given. Actually, even if like in the case of Christopher Nolan, right? He is a great director. He's made the Batman trilogy and so forth and Oppenheimer. But there's always Tenet. Have you watched Tenet?
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
hoping you'd
what's
bring
that
that up. That
about?
kind of,
Moving
yeah,
forwards and
that was.
backwards. You
I
know,
think that was Christopher Nolan with too much leeway, too much freedom. They let him do too much of what he likes. They didn't hold him
yeah.
back a little bit.
Actually, he did Inception was okay. Trying to do the dream sequence, trying to put several layers on it. I think that still acceptable to the audience who has limited ability to imagine a dream sequence within itself.
Yeah,
And then going too far, which is Tenant, can be too much asking the audience to understand what does it all mean. Oh, what does
yeah. I don't think he even knew what Tenet was. I don't think he even knew what was going on, to be honest.
I could just imagine what the actors were trying to imagine, trying to portray those key characters, especially Robin Pattinson, one of the main characters. I couldn't imagine they're trying to come. Does this even make sense when they're doing the roles forwards and back? I don't know, but again, credibility is important. Actually, if you're looking for directors alone, I would strongly suggest you look at the portfolio of Stanley Kubrick. He already passed away in the 90s, but his track record of making films is very interesting to say the least. Some of the greatest films, the Space Odyssey, if you're familiar with that, that's a sci-fi film that was made in the 60s, but the theme has resonated, all the way to the present. And then if you like horror genre, The Shining by Jack Nicholson, top notch. If you want a compelling story, and then something more warlike, Full Metal Jacket is another one, and so forth. The credential just by looking at the director's credits will entice you to watch his films already. But again, it's far few in between. It's not a guaranteed success. Not many people can be Stanley Kubrick or even Christopher Nolan, right? So, Prince mentioned biography, as it contains the genre like sci-fi, drama, and action. Yeah, but can be boring at times. Can be dragging, right? Like there are some biography can take hours, or some even do the mini series, right? To explain the narrative. I think the last one was Napoleon's, right? Whether it's accurate or not accurate in terms of its depiction. Okay, I mean, Joaquin Phoenix playing the role was okay. I like him in Joker. Again, that's another interesting genre, right? It's a superhero, but necessarily a superhero per se. It's more on of a drama, right? It's a dark drama, dark story of how the character is. I think they're building a sequel to that one already, right? Because it was that popular for an R-rated film, right? So it's not a given, okay? So storyline is important. Now, how do we guarantee the storyline will be a success? So Tara mentioned something very interesting. That's why you want to leverage that. If you have a good idea, how do you explore it some more? So if a good storyline will be compelling, how do you guarantee a good storyline every time out? Right? What's the last film that you enjoyed watching, Tara?
I don't really know. I don't really watch new movies that come out until like forever later. So
Okay. So what's the film that you can rewatch over and over? A rewatchable film. Because that's one thing that many people tend to gloss over. I'll watch a film that I can rewatch sometime in the future. If I only watch it one time, that's not a good film, right? In your case, what would that be? If you can watch something over and over.
I'm trying to think. I don't really watch too many movies. I really stick
Okay.
to TV shows.
How about TV shows?
I've watched The Ranch probably like 17 times through. So
Wow. Okay. So what makes it so compelling?
I don't know. It's good and I like it, and it's now just good background noise because I know what's going on.
Okay. Okay. When I was younger, when I graduated, I think Friends was showing. So right when I was going to college, and by the time I graduated, they finished, and I was watching it, similar to what you just mentioned. I'll play it at the background, whether at home or when I'm driving. playing in the background, hearing them talking, Chandler, Joey, all of those characters and so forth. Something that you can rewatch over and over and doesn't get tiring. And there's a reason they're still being shown in reruns, whether in Netflix or in other TV shows or TV channels, right? It's that what do you call this? They have that it factor, and it's hard to recreate that, right? There's Will and Grace, another popular TV show. Maybe you've watched also, what was it? Yeah, Everybody Loves Raymond. It's a family show. So again, it varies. It depends on your taste, right? But again, finding that makes sense, that will capture an audience, that would last a lifetime. Actually, Seinfeld is another comedy show. If you like those types of genres, it's very interesting, right? You'll know right away what decade they are targeting their audience for, so to speak, right? So what else? So how do you make a good storyline, so to speak? Right? Why some films are very timeless, very good, why some are not? How can you replicate good storyline one after the other? Because there is an exact formula for that one to recreate success. And that's your key to success, actually. That's why analysis is very vital. Steph, what do you think?
I don't know. I feel like maybe how they create like advertise a movie and creates like a connection. Like, I don't know, what's the exact word? Like you're invested in the characters before you even see it.
Okay. So how do you do
And-
that? I mean, obviously, if you haven't watched the film, you have no idea who the characters are until you watched it, right? So how do you make sure that you are fully invested in that character?
Well, I
If
think
that's
just like the way they use social media now with
Mm.
advertising movies is like,
so marketing or advertising. But you can only do that after the film is made. Do you think that would lead to success after the film is made, or it has to be done before you start filming?
I think like in the process of it.
Okay,
Kind of.
but how will you ensure success? As what Tara just suggested, having a good storyline is very critical to the success of films, right? That's why some films are memorable, timeless, and whatnot. But how do you ensure that, if that's even possible?
Yeah, I have no idea. That's all I
Nadia,
got.
it's okay. How about you, Prince? What do you think? Try to guess. That's why having a discussion is important. Even if you don't know, whatever comes to mind, springs to mind. I want you to share your ideas, right? I want to squeeze every ounce of your information that you have in your brains. We need to flex our brains from time to time, right? You have to exercise it, right? Just like our muscles, right? And our brain is part of it. How do you ensure success? That's where you delve deeper. So you have to go backwards, right? How does a film made to begin with, right?
So I would say like just the process of like the writing process, like you have to have multiple drafts, you have to edit it, you have to go through multiple channels to like make sure it's like go through a lot of people and get feedback. Like there's a whole long process of doing
Yeah.
it and just ensuring that you're properly taking the feedback, because like a lot of studios, like I swear they release a movie with the first draft of the script. Like it's like there's so many obvious mistakes that like if any reasonable writing team would like go through it and like there's no way they didn't catch this stuff. So I think it's just
Yeah.
like maybe just like negligence on the point of like I think just ensuring a good process of writing is
Yeah.
important, like with
Yeah.
feedback.
Writing the right content, right? Like in the case of the movie The Shining I mentioned earlier by Stanley Kubrick. It was written by, what's his name? The popular author. Wait, let me look at it. Stephen King. There you go. So if you've heard of Stephen King, he didn't like the movie version of The Shining. But always remember, the book is different from a movie adaptation, right? The book you can write as lengthy as you want, explain as necessary to explain a particular scene and storytelling. There's no time limit, right? But in a movie, you only have 90 minutes or a little bit more, depending on the film that you're writing here. So that's why I'm very appreciative of good directors, writers being able to translate a particular book or book into a narrative for the viewing audience. Now they may change certain aspects. Obviously, the goal here is to make it better. If they made it better, then I'm okay with it. Now, if it's for the worst, then who's gonna watch it anyhow? Right?
Yeah, that was gonna be my other point, is having like, for like another guest would be, I personally love movies that are from like popular books and stuff, like for example, like if you look at something like Lord of the Rings, like that was like probably the best example of a good book adaptation. And I
Yeah.
guess even more recently, Dune is the same thing. It's a
Yeah, it's
very
from the book,
popular
yeah.
book. It's a book that like it was written in like what, the 60s or something. Like it's
Yeah.
it's a classic. Like everyone, like it's proven to be successful
Effective.
already.
Yeah.
So taking it and then like properly adapting it faithfully to screen
That's
is
why Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings was so successful. He stayed true to the source material, not more so
yeah.
than the one in the TV series, which was abysmal, to say the least.
Oh yeah.
If you're going to destroy a franchise, this is how you do it, right? You spend billions of dollars acquiring the rights, and then this is what content you make. It's kind of sad. Another
Again,
example
with
is
that, it's like the writers they hired for that, like, because I love Lord of the Rings, so I obviously, I looked into that because I hated the Rings of Power, and like it's not like a terrible show, it's just like terrible Lord of the Rings, and it's because the writers, like, again, like they had these billions of dollars or whatever, and they hired writers who've like never written anything
could care
successful
less
before,
about the
like,
or source material.
yeah, and they're just like some brand new, so it's like that's why the credibility is important to me as well, like.
And obviously there's always a team. If you're trying to create a character that people can root for, you always have to struggle a bit, right? From the beginning, you're struggling, you rise from the ashes, to become successful. Not all of a sudden you're so strong, overpowered. Who's gonna relate to that? No one is a Superman character, right? And not regardless if it's a male character or a female-led character, right? It has to be believable in its narrative, which is kind of sad to begin with, because there's an opportunity always missing out, and not just in the Lord of the Rings or the Rings of Power, right? Also another series which I've seen in Netflix is The Witcher, which was starred at the time by Henry Cavill, right? He was the one who wanted to portray, who pursued the role, and they were lucky to have him, right? He was a big star already at the time. And guess what happened? He left because the creators behind it wanted to change it. We want to focus on the female characters. Obviously, they didn't read the book, didn't even play the game, right? The main character is not Ciri, it's Geralt, right? So if there's no Geralt there, sidelining the main character, then what's the whole point of the whole series, right? And again, if you're going to cater to a different audience, then why not create a different story altogether? And they always tends to make that mistake. They have this core base of audience already built in. They're not taking advantage, and they're trying to piss off the main audience who already knows the content already. But
Yeah, it's crazy how often you see that nowadays. Like it's honestly, I swear they're doing it on purpose at this point, because it's
yeah,
everything. It's Star Wars, it's the Halo show, it's The Witcher, it's
it's
Lord
kind
of the
of
Rings. Like it's
speaking of
literally
Halo,
every single like, I
yeah.
don't know why it's
Actually, the debate in Halo, right? The main Master Chief's character, he's supposed to be unknown, right? Like the Mandalorian. You don't know who the character is. But in the TV show, you'll see him take off the helmet, put it on, take it off, put it on.
yeah.
There's no mystery anymore. In the game of Halo, right? You don't know who Master Chief is. You hear his voice. It's supposed to be embodying whoever the player character playing the game is, right? So it can be relatable to anyone. Similar to how what was the other game? Similar to Halo. I forgot the game. It was a trilogy as well. Crap. It's like Star Wars. Crap, I forgot.
Mass Effect.
Mass Effect, yeah. Right? If they were able to do that, I think it would be very successful as well. Because it has already the built-in storyline, the different races and so forth, right? But
Yeah.
I'm assuming I'm betting they're going to mess it up. Because if they messed up Star Wars, they're gonna mess up everything else. So
Yeah, it's everything they touch nowadays,
don't
especially
don't,
like
don't mess with it. Leave it alone, right?
yeah,
Until some-
at this point it's like don't even try, right?
even
With
try,
stuff
yeah.
like don't even try to make like just leave it. Like I don't know,
Yeah.
it's weird.
That's very telling if you notice that they cannot come up with original storylines. They have to borrow from game concepts already.
Mhm.
You have The Last of Us is another example, right? So the first season, right, that they showed in HBO was they followed through to the game, right? My concern is come season 2, are they going to follow the same storyline, which was very controversial? So I don't know. Is it going to work out for it or not? We'll have to wait and see, right? And then there's the Fallout that's recently released, right? Which it could be mixed depending on your perspective, which Fallout series you prefer. So again, there's always opportunity to be successful, but I don't know, for some reason, one reason or another, they're trying to sabotage the core audience who enjoys watching TV shows or movies in general. So we'll have to wait and see. But going back to our discussion here, so marketing is important, like what Steph mentioned earlier. But again, that's after the fact the film has already been made. What if the film is not, enjoyable to begin with? So you have to go back from the very beginning, all the way from the very start. So before the film is even made. So before the script was made, how do you get good storytelling? What's the source material, so to speak, right? Just look at another example. I'm sure you've watched this. Game of Thrones, right? Have you guys watched Game of Thrones?
Yep.
Hopefully not the last season.
Yeah,
Sad
don't
to say.
remind me.
Actually, I only started watching it when it was at season 5. So at the start, when it was, very popular, I wasn't following it. I didn't start watching it until when Jon Snow was resurrected. That piqued my interest. What the heck was this? A main character died, and then it was, revived the following season. So it got me interested. Then I had to rewatch the very start of the series. And then little did I know, season 8 was around the corner. If I knew that was going to happen, I shouldn't have watched the series altogether. But again, why, a very popular series was so good at the beginning, at the middle, but at the end was terrible. They couldn't wait
They
for
lost their they lost their source material. They
they
went
couldn't
past
wait
the
for the
books.
author to finish the book.
Well, I mean, he still hasn't written another one, so it's
Yeah.
not, I don't blame him for that. It's just the fact that they weren't able to continue the story effectively. Like they just
If I were
they
HBO,
didn't.
I would have paid him a lot of money to finish the book. Simple as
Yeah.
that. People were clamoring for more. That's the whole point then. If audience are clamoring for more of your content, wouldn't it make sense to finish the story? Pay the man, right? Whatever it takes, whether he's having a writer's block or not, make him finish the story, because he had already a goal in mind. I don't think that the ending of the Game of Thrones series was the main the plan for R.R. Martin's storyline there, right? I'm assuming a lot of people had something more complex in mind, right? At worst, they could have made Jon Snow the king, right? Not his brother, Bran the Broken. There was no even hint that he was going to be the future king. But anyway, so again, so the source material is the key, right? It's not the budget, because it's not a guarantee. Now, marketing is important. Obviously, the more popular the film, like how Oppenheimer was popular, how Barbie was popular because of raising awareness, right? It helped a lot to raise a lot of awareness and to promote the film. But if the film is not good, it doesn't matter, right? Because typically, outside of watching trailers, it's through word of mouth, right? More often than not. So again, it always goes back. Like in the case of, as mentioned earlier, the Lord of the Rings, when Peter Jackson made the film, it took him almost a decade to start filming the trilogy in itself, because he had to do a lot of research before, being able to do justice to the film itself. Okay, so what else? So you need to have the good source material, directors. So you have to have a lot of things. So you just can't imagine the excruciating the ordeal of trying to create a successful film, right? There are a lot of films lately that haven't been made because of mismanagement. A good example is, again, another superhero film. This is how bad it is. If a studio already finished the film, I think if you've heard of this film, Batgirl, they finished the film and spent already $100 million. $100 million, and they scrapped the whole film. So I mean, they're willing to waste $100 million just not to publish the film. What a waste of money, right? So that's poor decision making. Whoever was in charge of that should have been fired to begin with, right? Whether a film should be green lighted or not should have been carefully thought about it before making that decision. Then you see always the fallout from films that, like in the case of the Justice League, right? When they had to make two versions of the same film. Kind of sad, right? It had a lot of potential to create a lot of sequels moving forward, right? Anyway, so looking at the data, so the key here is, as mentioned, so whether you agree or not, the point here is investigating in terms of looking at the data set, how to come up with different ideas, good ideas at that, takes a lot of time and effort. So making sure you do extensive descriptive analysis. Like in today's case, we'll be focusing on the data visualization. I think I've already uploaded an Excel file. Let me check again. In the heck is it? In the SeatWorks tab. Yeah. So in the data visualization, so it's a data set still. It's the same as before. Excuse me. So it's an old data set from the Heavenly Chocolates. Okay. So your goal here today is, so it's almost 9:30, so we'll have a 15-minute break before we resume. So your goal here is to create data visualization, approximating a dashboard already. Okay. So you're still using Excel here. So next meeting we'll start using, or you'll be practicing using Power BI already. So your goal is to provide a visual, so a screenshot of the data set that you've already analyzed. You're just going to present it in a visual manner. So it's your discretion what you want to highlight. So I'll show you my work later on, but you have to do yours first and make sure that the entire page of your worksheet is full of charts and graphs. Now you may want to add slicers here if you're familiar with it. It would help a lot, but if not, just basic graphs is sufficient for today's exercise. And you're going to communicate what does the dashboard present. Based on what you've discussed already in your paper, what we've discussed today, it should be clearly communicated in that dashboard. Okay? So in a visual manner, without any text or context, so to speak. It's just charts. So that when we see it, does it make sense? Is it clearly stated or not? Okay? So you're going to create just one dashboard. Let's see if we can achieve that. Okay? So you use different techniques here at your discretion. That's why you'll notice I'll never limit you guys to do what is necessary, but only remember what you should or avoid using in terms of visualization, which is creating pie charts. Okay? That's a main deduction if I see a pie chart in your presentation already. Okay? Questions? None?
You
Okay.
wanna
Okay.
Do you
So
want to
we'll
set
have,
up the breakout room right now or in
yeah.
after the break?
Sure, I can open the breakout room now. Breakout rooms. Yeah, okay. I'll pause the recording. Recording. There you go.
Oh no, not the
Oh.
pie chart.
Oh, yeah, I was about to say the dreaded pie chart. See, that's a dead giveaway right away. Okay. So again, there's nothing wrong with the charts, the tables that you're presenting here. But if you notice, have you maximized using the whole real estate here? Right? There are blank spaces here you haven't maximized here. And in terms of the chart, creating using the what do you call this? Having legends here. The whole point of creating a chart here is to make it easier for the reader, right? The fact that you have to put legends on top of it will make it confusing. And in my video, what did I say specifically regarding about using different colors?
Don't use different colors
Why, Kyle?
because it's distracting.
And also, can we determine, or is there an order to color?
No, unless
No.
it's like a gradient.
Gradient, that's right. Because you cannot say in this case, right? In the table here, you can see on Friday, blue has the highest bar, right? Is blue better than red over green? Right? There's no order to color, right? But gradients, there is. Like blue, all the way to dark blue, or whatever color, there's a order to it. And again, as mentioned, like if you look at this, right? So it's confusing on two folds in the pie chart, right? What if the slices is somewhat close to one another? Can we actually determine which one is larger or smaller? And we have a better option outside of the pie chart, which is using a bar chart or a histogram here. And also, the only time, and this is the only reason, you may be able to use a pie chart if you're comparing two categories. If it's beyond two categories, I do not recommend it, right? And the fact that the slices are different size slices, right? What does it even mean? The smaller size is obvious enough, but the medium slice, the larger slice, is there any difference at all? It's difficult to tell, right? That's in 2-dimension alone. The fact that, some people prefers to use 3-dimensional gets even more confusing. So the proportion is difficult to tell. But with the 2-dimension bar chart, whether it's horizontal or vertical, it's much easier, right? But anyway, so in this table, Prince, what are you trying to communicate here? What's the focal point here? What's the focus here? What are you trying to convey?
Okay, so I just like made the pie chart because of that it's shows how like many time in a minute, how customer spend like through the browser kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. But is there a better way to communicate that in terms of time? Because a pie chart is difficult to convey time, right? So what would be a better alternative here?
A simple bar chart.
Bar chart would be better, right? Similar to what you did here at the top, right? Okay. What else? So you have a table here on the left side, right? So again, you have a table here, but what does it trying to communicate? What are you trying to tell here?
Okay, so I just want to tell like who is like what is the favorite or which is the most popular browser
Browser.
through the customer. Yeah, through
Okay.
customer use.
Okay.
Most the customer use it for their like search.
Mm-hmm. So how do you communicate easily, visually? Now the table is complete, right? But is there a better way of communicating it? There's something lacking if you notice. It's a starting point, but it's not the end goal here. So at one glance, I should be able to see what you're trying to highlight here. So in the case of the preferred browser, we should be highlighted in a sense.
Internet Explorer.
Oh, how do you highlight that? Is there a technique that we can use? Oh, this question applies to everyone here also.
I don't know. We can just like
Like what?
shows it in a different color. Like
Eh,
we can just highlight in the table.
Exactly, highlight it, right? Is there a way to highlight it that would highlight if it's the highest value versus the lowest value?
Yeah.
Anyone?
So we can do by sort.
But you have to do that first. In data visualization, when you're doing a dashboard, has to be already presented visually. The fact you have to do several steps is counterintuitive. But you're on the right track when you mentioned you want to highlight the certain aspects, right? Like in this case, Internet Explorer has the highest total time usage, right? So how do we highlight that literally? Any ideas? It's not by sorting. Come on. Anyone? Same goes for your table here with the days of the week, right? What is the preferred browser here? Right? You created a cross tabulation here. So how do we highlight key aspects now? Obviously, in terms of totality, the preferred browser is Internet Explorer, which is the highest frequency of 27, right? But how do we highlight that? For a well-versed in data analysis, I can easily see it. But for those who are not, how do we highlight that? How do we present it in a better manner? Prince already is on the right track saying that you want to highlight it. Literally, how do you highlight it?
By conditional formatting, or we just like
Yes,
do
conditional
the
formatting. Oh, which one are you supposed to highlight? No, you have to highlight the content first. Which one are you supposed to highlight?
Internet Explorer for the browsers.
The text or the numbers? What are you supposed to highlight?
The numbers.
Oh, the whole column of numbers. No, the whole column. That's row. The whole column. There you go. From top to bottom.
Oh,
There you
okay.
go. Then go conditional formatting. Oh, let's use color scales. Color scales. Oh, the lower left bottom. Lower left. Lower left. There you go.
Oh, this one.
Yeah, that's it. Isn't that better? With just one glance, you can
Oh, yeah.
already see what you're trying to highlight here. Literally, you just said highlight, right? So it's highlighting the highest value. If you want to highlight the lowest value, you can do the opposite. So you can play around with conditional formatting, right? So that's visually more appealing, easier to read without even context, without asking, right? Oh, you can do the same for the cross tabulation above also, okay? So you have to learn how to manipulate the data to your advantage. So you have to be able to communicate. Now, you don't want just to highlight the whole table. So, so you want to be careful. Are we highlighting the total only? Whether it's the rows and columns, or are we highlighting the table within? Okay? So you have to be clear in your aspect. So what do you want to highlight here, Prince? The total first, or you want the cross tab within?
No, grand total.
Oh, so you start with the total. Oh. So for the days of the week, oh, you can use the same color scales and then highlight it. Okay, oh, you select that. How about for the preferred browser? You can also highlight the total as well. So you can use the same color or a different color. No, the total. The total. Where's the total?
This one?
No, no, no. We're on the same table.
No.
Yeah. The total. The total for the browser.
Okay.
It's 16, 27, and 7, right? That's the total. So you want to highlight that as well. Okay, then use conditional form. So is it good to use the same color, or you want to try a different color this time?
with the same color? No,
See,
or
if you
with
notice, if
this
you use
one.
different color, it's kind of confusing, right?
Yeah.
That's why gradient is always key. Do you want to use the same gradient green again, or do you want to use a different gradient this time around?
This time it's different because
Different.
it's a browser, right? Yeah.
That's right. So you want to highlight certain aspect. There has to be a distinguishing aspect. So you want to use the different gradients here. No, different gradients are different colors. If you highlight yellow, green, and red, it's kind of confusing. If you look at Control Z, you can redo it again. Control Z. No. Escape.
Oh, I got
Control
it. I
Z.
got it.
Yeah, it's back. Control Z. There you go. And then choose a different color scales. You can
So
use
you
red.
want to highlight.
You can use red or white. The one to the right side. The one on the right. There you go. Or you want the further right. There you go. Right?
Oh,
So you can pick and choose, right? So you can play around with it. There's no exact. The one on the right side. Yeah, there you go. Right? So it highlights. Are you trying to highlight the lowest value or the highest value? Right? And then you can play around with the
yes.
values within the frequency table itself. Right? That's why you have to learn to create multiple tables, graphs, and charts. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Let's go to. Thank you for sharing. Okay. Let's go to group one. So can you share us with your dashboard or data visualization?
Good. Okay.
Okay. So in your case,
did it work? Sorry.
yeah. So it's showing. Okay. So now you have 5 tables here. But again,
All right.
were you guys
Oh,
able to
sorry.
maximize the entire space in your worksheet that you're presenting now?
Yeah, I mean, we could have added more. It's just we didn't want to overwhelm. We just left with what we had.
Yeah, I know. But the whole point here is when you're creating a dashboard, you want to compress as much information as possible. Too much is
Yeah,
bad.
I think we did pretty good here.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Too
I think we
much
squished it in.
too much table is bad. Too little is bad as well. So what's the
So you-
optimal number?
So do you want the tables as well, or just the graphs? Because we moved the tables
It
away.
doesn't. It's up to you. I have no
Okay, yeah.
specific preferences. But the key here is what are you trying to communicate here? What are you trying to highlight? Right.
All right.
If you're
So
going to create a table, so make sure you use appropriate visualization cues. If it's charts and graphs, make sure it's done appropriately as well. So what do you have here? Go ahead, Ryan. What are you trying to
all right. So
convey here?
the big one here is correlation. So the most correlated is pages viewed to amount spent. This is like in terms of amount spent. That's what we focused on was amount spent because that's the dependent variable, and
Mhm.
all the 4 others are independent that affect it.
Hmm.
So yeah, so this one shows the highest correlation is the pages viewed, and then time as the most important variables. But
Mhm.
and then we just broke it down. These 4 charts are one
The
for
different
each
charts. Okay.
the different
Okay.
variables. So
Okay. I like
like
that.
so this shows your days, so Sunday to Saturday, and so you can see here Friday's the best.
you can
I
clear-
did try doing the gradient, like so that I wanted it so like Friday would be the darkest and then it gets light, but
It's
like
okay.
I couldn't.
No. For
I-
bar
I
charts
wasn't able
and
to-
histogram, you
yeah,
don't need to do that.
I
That's
wasn't
not
able to do it. There was no option.
No.
So-
You don't have to do it. Actually, it's not necessary. But
But
the
yeah.
question here, when you're doing the correlation here, you have 2 options here. The one at the top is the chart. The bottom one is the numerical values, right? So you have
this one here.
yeah, the one there. So you have two aspects you're presenting here. It's kind of redundant, right? Which you think is
So, yeah.
communicating it more effectively, the one at the top or at the bottom?
The bar, but the problem I had, so there's actually a reason it's like that. So it was originally just labels, right? But then the problem with the labels is like it's inside the. Like, you see how that's I couldn't
bar.
like there was no way to like the
Change
only
the
way
color
to
of the font. You can always change the color of the font.
I guess, yeah, but then it's just I don't know. I just felt like that was kind of weird. Like you couldn't see
Okay.
it, so I just
That's
the
right,
first
that's
thing I
right.
saw was that. Boom.
Yeah,
now it's
good
at the
it-
bottom. And I couldn't. I did try to get rid of the numbers, but it wouldn't let me.
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah,
this is
actually,
the best I could get.
But if if you want to present or visually present correlation, what would be a more effective tool or technique? You already have it in your dashboard now.
Oh, like this? Like
Yeah,
a
the scatter
a
plot.
scattered.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can clearly
Okay.
see it's much more effective, right? you can see the scatter plot. Is it highly correlated? Is it scattered or not correlated? Right?
Okay.
But if you want to highlight the numbers as well, it's important. So again, it's your discretion what you want to highlight, but you don't want to use redundancy, too many tables, or using two techniques for the price of one, so to speak. So you always
Mhm.
choose one what's most appropriate. So if
Yeah.
you're trying
Yeah,
to
we
use
went with the-
correlation, the scatter plot is the most effective. So from a glance, I can see right away what you're trying to convey based on the title,
So
based on the
yeah,
plot points here.
yeah, and this one is for the time. This is just the
Yeah.
time specifically.
So you
Yeah.
could do the same for the browser and for the days,
Well,
right?
yeah, but it's not numbers. Like it's Sunday, Monday, so it would be like we thought bar chart would
It's
be better.
categorical, right? But you can
Yeah,
convert that to
same.
numerical values. Am I right?
We had to for correlation, like to get
Yeah.
but like I figured this was just more simple, like easy to see, like right away. I don't know.
Different ways. That's my point.
Yeah.
So you could
Yeah.
show the bar chart, the frequency first. Then, as you mentioned here in your table, you notice that in terms of the correlation, which one has the highest correlation value?
Pages viewed
Pages viewed and
and time. Yeah. and
time. Oh, so you wanna create the scatter plot that represents that. That would
Okay.
be a better way to present it.
Like
because-
this specific, like make this one a scatter, the correlation.
Yeah, the correlation of the pages viewed and time only.
Yeah. Okay.
So create the scatter plot that you have there, the different plot points. That would be more effective because
Yeah,
that's what you
so-
want to
okay.
highlight. Again, you have several correlations, right? You don't want to present all of it because some of it is less correlated, like days, even browser is negligible, so to speak. But time and pages viewed are highly correlated, then that's what you want to highlight. Right? And that's what
Yeah.
you
So
were
like for example,
analyzing.
this one here, I could change to a scatter the same way I have it
Yeah.
up here, the trend with the trend line that
Yeah.
shows. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So you have different choices here. It's up to you to expand which you think is more effective in communicating your narrative, so to speak. Okay.
Okay.
That's the whole point here. Okay. So let me show you my work here and see if it makes sense to you guys.
Okay. I will stop.
Okay. Thank you. Can you guys see the screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So what do you see here?
I like that you did the top two bar charts. It's like a multi, like it shows the day and the browser. That's something I would have.
So
I'm not
you can
sure
have
how to do.
present the data as a totality first. Then you want to break it down further, which obviously can create several more tables here, but I only choose certain aspects that made sense for me, right? And if you notice, I created a slicers here, which is a very effective tool. So that when you're presenting here, let's say we're looking at the total amount spent, right? Do you notice anything that stood out that got your attention that you should focus on? Look at the total amount spent at the top right corner, top left corner here. Anything that stood out in terms of days of the week versus the
Well,
different browser?
like Friday and Monday, I guess.
Friday.
like
Oh,
Friday.
so
yeah.
let's select the Friday and let's focus in further. And then it changes the
Oh.
slicers.
Wow. Okay.
You see
That's
that?
interesting.
So you see that on a Friday, you see that Firefox tends to have the highest total amount spent. And based on average amount spent, Firefox, Internet Explorers are not far from one another. Okay. And if you look at the middle one, you can see that the time and pages viewed in terms of its relationship, it typically ranges from 4 to 5 pages, and individual tend to spend 5 to 10 minutes. So that's the idea. And if you were to start all over again, so let's choose another day. So outside of Friday, what else? Which day has the highest sales? You can see here, Monday is another candidate, which we discussed yesterday, right? So if we were to highlight it again, you can see the total amount spent is now changed. Earlier, it was Firefox, right? But based on the different day, Internet Explorer is now the preferred or the preferred mode or browser in terms of the total amount spent. And also, which is kind of interesting, if you look at the average amount spent, it's not Internet Explorer that has the highest average amount. It's Firefox. Why is that? There's kind of, you want to explain that. It's kind of odd. They had one of the lowest amount spent totality, but in terms of per average, they have the highest. Kind of curious, right? You want to investigate further. Maybe something important that can be beneficial in terms of crafting a strategy. So is it a clear-cut Internet Explorer the preferred one? Or maybe you want to take into consideration Firefox as a mode also. Something to consider. That's why creating a narrative is important. Okay. And in terms of pages viewed, you notice here. So earlier, when we selected the Friday group, it's 5 to 10 minutes on average time versus pages viewed. On a Monday, it's not the same. They tend to spend longer. Instead of 5 minutes, it's now 10 to 15 minutes. Why is that? So again, different questions you have to ask yourselves and try to find out. So it creates different narratives. And if you notice at the bottom, you see here overall, Internet Explorer is the preferred browser in terms of sales generated. And the frequency of sales over the course of the week in totality, it's still Monday and Friday. And you can see here the table here, similar to what Prince was showing earlier, right? You highlight certain aspects. How much are we talking about? So you just look at the frequency here. How about the exact amount? How much is the average amount or total amount? You can see here clearly Monday, they are willing to spend as much as $90. Friday, close to $86. So you have critical information already presented to you right in front of you. So if you want to dig deeper, that's how you present your dashboard in a sense here. Now, I could add more, but obviously it can get complicated quickly. So how you strike a balance is the question here, is the challenge here for everyone. Okay? Especially for you guys in your field when you're doing extensive analysis in financial statements, right? That's a lot of information you're going to course through. Just look at the balance sheet alone, right? The assets, liabilities, right? A lot of information. And then don't get me started in the income statement, right? Look at the different costs that you're dealing with, the expenses. How do you break it down? Do you highlight all of it? Then obviously you're presenting the entire statement. So you want to highlight certain aspects only. And the fact that you're going to present it in a longitudinal presentation in terms of, 10 years. So do you present all of it? Or do you want to highlight certain aspects only? So that's the main challenge. So whether a cash flow, income statement, or the balance sheet, that would be the challenge here. So this is the thing that you need to get used to. If you think that this is your forte, then good for you. If not, then you need to get some practice so that, this is inevitable. So I'm just giving you a bird's eye view of what you're going to expect, for your future careers, if this is the profession that you're going to pursue here, right? So is it necessarily you have to be good with numbers? Not necessarily. That's why if you notice, the analysis portion here is critical. It's about critical thinking, right? What does the number tell you? Is the number favorable to the company or not favorable? So as an analyst, how do you help the company? Again, it goes back to the main outline that I prescribed, right? What's your courses of action? You give them choices, 3 choices. Then what's your recommendation at the end of the day? And if you come up with the right courses of action and made the right choice, you'll be more successful than not. Okay? It's not a guaranteed success, but it tends to benefit me. Actually, I've applied it in different instances, whether, buying simple stuff or, the thing that I can remember that has helped me when you're planning, putting up options is typically when you're planning on a long trip, going on vacations, right? How do you decide where to go on a trip? Obviously, when you go on a trip, you have to consider the cost, the duration, where do you want to visit, where are you going to stay, and so forth. What are your means of transportation, right? Because when my family visited the United States a few years back, we had to rent a car because public transportation is not as readily available. But when we visited in Taiwan or parts in Japan, public transport is readily accessible. So your strategy may differ. Where do you want to stay? Do you want to stay in a hotel, Airbnb, or do you have relatives that you can stay? So the cost will be tantamount, right? So that given the complexity of the situation, what's the bottom line? How much is going to cost you? Oh, and considering the airfare at that. The airfare is variable rate, right? So it differs if it's an off-peak season versus if it's a peak season, whether it's summer season or Christmas season. So all of those things you have to factor in. Complicated stuff, but you have to simplify it so that you make the best decision there. And luckily enough, based on my experience, when I plan a trip for our family, we tend to enjoy it. You know, I tend to plan out what we want to do. Now, obviously, it's not robotic that our itinerary is from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. This is what we're going to do. We have a general sense of what we want to do. This is the places where we want to touch base. Obviously, it's flexible enough that you can spend time there. And if we miss it, it's okay. We're here to enjoy and relax, right? So it's your decision. What should it look like? That's why it's going to be interesting for next week's topics when we discuss how you predict your data, right? So if you notice here, we've been analyzing the data from the past, right? The next part now is how do you manipulate the data so that you can predict it? What would it look like in the future? And that's very important in your profession as well, right? When you're analyzing data, forecasting is as an important tool so that you can prepare for capital budgeting, right? For any company, right? So for next year, what are your plans? Do we increase our budget for spending, for marketing, for sales, whatever the case? What's your basis? Again, you look at your past data so that you can make future strategies that's reasonable, so to speak. Okay? Questions? Okay, so we leave it at that. So we'll continue our discussion. By the way, Yaya, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, can you stay after class so I can talk to you?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so we'll leave it at that. So tomorrow we'll continue with this discussion with the next case. And again, it's more on, describing the data. And in this case, we're going to start utilizing Power BI here. So if you're still not yet familiar, I suggest watching the tutorials there, how to use it, download the software. It's free, right? It should be free. If you find the software, it's asking for payment, then you're in the wrong website. It's free. So it's a free tool. So it's just a matter of migrating your Excel data to Power BI to visualize your data. It's the same process. So you just need to get used to it. So once you get used to it, it gets easier. So you can focus more on the decision-making parts. Okay? If nothing else, that's it. We'll finish now and then we'll continue
Just
tomorrow.
before you end, one
Yeah.
question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Would you be able, so the cases that are due on Sunday, say 5, 6, and 7, along with our part 1 of the final, the discussion boards aren't open yet for us to submit them.
Really?
Can you open them?
Okay.
Yeah, can you open them so we can
Sure,
submit
sure.
them?
Okay, no
Thank you.
problem. Okay. So it's locked. I thought it was open already. Thank you. Thank you for mentioning that. Okay. 5, 6. Okay. I'll try to address it later after the class. Okay.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay, I'll stop.